Okay, so in scene 5 of Death and the King's Horseman, we have the scene of suffering. The last scene of a tragedy is always called the scene of suffering because it's where everybody dies. Not everybody, but the tragic hero almost always, and others who are close to the tragic hero. So this is the setting is the a cell where Ellison has been locked up by Simon, and Ellison calls Simon, well, he says your twin brother the moon. Well, it's a white moon, so he's like white man, white moon. It's kind of funny. And Pilkings thinks the night is at peace now, and Ellison says, what does this mean for you? Like, what does peace mean to you? And Simon's like, well, it's quiet. And he's like, no, quiet doesn't always mean peace. And Ellison says, you did not save my life, you destroyed it, and you destroyed the lives of many people. He said, the moon was my messenger and my guide. When I missed that like gap in between the heaven and earth in the light of the moon, I've probably missed my time to commit the ritual suicide. He says, did you think this all over before you pushed our world from its course and sever the cord that links us to the great origin? Well, when it says sever the cord, obviously it's a reference to the umbilical cord, which is the maternal, which is the holding of life. So when you sever the maternal, you no longer have a hold on life. You just have a society that's just blowing in the wind. There's no roots, because the maternal gives us roots. The masculine pushes life along, so we need that as well, but the maternal gives us that grounding. And then there's no grounding. And Pilkings says, you don't really believe that, and Pilkings and Ellison keep saying the world is set adrift and its inhabitants are lost around them. There's nothing but emptiness, and that's a reference to chaos. That's one of your questions in the annotations. And then Iologia comes into the cell, and this is where we get deeper into the metaphor of the plantain. So a plantain, if you ever looked at a plantain, it's just like a big banana. And she talks about the stalk of the plantain, and she's using this metaphor to talk about how the grown-up plantain should basically the parent stalk is supposed to give all of itself to the child stalk, STOCK, right? So like a child is not supposed to help the parent so much as the parent is supposed to basically dry itself out for the child. And that when Iologia makes the commentary that, and she even asks Ellison, she goes, does the parent give to the child or the child give to the parent? And he's like, I don't understand. And she's like, I'm not asking for your understanding, yes or no. And he says the parent gives to the parent is supposed to give to the child. And she goes, well, you reverse the course of the world. And so when she talks about that reversal, that's the reversal in tragedy called peripetia. Let me find the spot here so I can reach the exact part. We have the peripetia, the reversal, and then we have Ellison's recognition. That he once was trying to blame it on his bride. He was trying to blame it on the white man, trying to blame it on the world. And Iolocia's not having any of this. She's just like, yeah, explain it how you will. I hope this brings you peace. She says the bush rat fled his rightful cause and then reached the market and said, save me, save me. And she says, are these fitting words to hear from an ancestral mask? There's a wild beast at my heels is not becoming language from a hunter. Like she's not having this. She's like, make all the excuses you want. None of that works. And then Iologia says, you who were once Ellison Oba. So the title of the King's Horseman, which is Ellison Oba, has now been transferred. He's no longer the King's Horseman because she knows that Alunde's committed suicide. And so he is the King's Horseman. And Ellison is left with just as the play says, poop and vomit to step in as he enters the gates of heaven. So then Iologia and Ellison have their little back and forth. Again, Iologia is not having any of it. Iologia has brought not a gift, but she's come bearing something. And Ellison really wants to see it. And Pilkings is like, I guess, well, Pilkings is really worried about his position. He doesn't want anyone to take advantage of his position of power. And so when Jane steps over the line, the invisible line created between one piece of land and the other, as the text says, there's these whistles blown. And that's when Ellison sees the body of his son, like literally the dead body of Alunde. And Iologia said, this is the burden you have made. Ellison says, I have a duty to perform, and Pilkings says, well, whatever duty you have to do, you have to perform it in there. The praise singer calls for Ellison, Oba. He says, one last time. And the dirge is a funeral march. And then the praise singer says, if you had followed when you should, we would not say the horse preceded its rider. If you had followed when it was time, we would not say the dog has raced beyond and left his master behind. If you had raised your will to cut the thread of life at the summons of the drums. But now you must speak your words over the shadow that is the dead body of your son. The praise singer finally says, Ellison, we placed the reins of the world in your hands, and you watched it plunge over the edge into a bitter precipice. That's the edge of the bitter, that's into the abyss. You sat with the folded arms while evil strangers tilted this world from its course and crashed it into the edge of emptiness, which is also the abyss. The praise singer says, what end will be, we are not gods to tell. So that means like they have no idea what's going to happen after these deaths. Our world is tumbling into the void of strangers, more collapse of culture. Finally, Simon turns his head, and Ellison takes the chain that he's like basically in shackles and chains, and he takes the chain and just wraps it around his neck. So, Simon tries to restore him, basically tries to give him CPR, and Iologia's just like, why are you even trying to do that? Like, he doesn't even want you to do that. Like, he's dead now, and he's going to, like, be stepping in the poop and dung and droppings of mice and whatever that his son and the dog and the horse left. So Iologia has it out for Pilkings here at the end. She says, the gods demanded only the expired plantain, so the parent stock, but you cut down the sap-laden shoot to feed your people, your pride. And she says, there is your board, filled to overflowing, feast on it. Basically, she says, when she says, there is your board, filled to overflowing, she means, here's everything. Your board, like a charcuterie board, like, here's everything, overflowing. It's all yours because it's what you've demanded. You've demanded everything. So even though she's not letting Ellison off the hook to use Pilkings' presence as an excuse, she does still blame him after Ellison dies a little bit. She blames Ellison, she blames Pilkings because, again, in a tragedy, the women know everything. This is any tragedy. You can read any tragedy, and if you look at the feminine characters, including children, like Alunde, he's a child in this case. He knows everything. He does what he has to do. But if you look at women and children in a play or a tragedy play, they will tell you the truth. It's called the Cassandra factor. Cassandra was a ancient Trojan woman who was taken as a prize of war during the Trojan War, and she told her curse was that she would be cursed to tell the truth, and no one would believe her. And that's the curse of Cassandra, and it applies to every woman in a tragedy. And we're going to find out also that in Infernal Comedy, which is the comedy that's closest to the abyss, women and children are also abused. And that's the end. Hopefully this helped. Bye.